not just entertainment.
It's not just entertainment. And the since you dissected our song there, our opening song, I got to ask you about my probably my favorite movie and what you think about it. Blues Brothers. What did you think? Good musical?
Oh my goodness, yes. That movie actually jump-started my arranging career, because that movie came out in 1980, and when I was in college, not too long after that, a guy who was going to the University of Pennsylvania contacted me and said, "Hey, I heard you write music." And I had written like 2 charts in my life at that point. And he said, "We want to do a Blues Brothers tribute band where we dress like the Blues Brothers and play all the songs from the record, and we're going to play frat houses." And I went, "That's a great idea. I love those songs." So I spent, 3 or 4 weeks and wrote out all of those charts and got a horn section together, and we played 3 or 4 or 5 tunes. But just as a music historian, thinking about who was in that movie performing in 1980, almost all of those performers, especially James Brown, especially Aretha, John Lee Hooker, Cab Calloway, right? The people in that film hadn't really made any money in years.
Yeah.
Only one of them that was still making money was Ray Charles. And it
really jump-started awareness.
It sure did. It introduced an entire generation to these amazing, amazing artists. Even John Lee. John Lee, when that movie came out in 1980, he was 70 years old or something already, 60-something years old. But that scene when they go on to Maxwell Street, they go to try and find the cafe, and John Lee's there playing.
Boom, boom, boom,
yeah,
boom.
exactly. Yeah. It's just amazing. And, rest in peace, Aretha. We just lost her this week. She does that fabulous scene in the diner with Matt Murphy, who died earlier this year too.
Just died earlier, yeah. And I thought it was really, I don't remember the exact backstory, but she didn't want to pander and do respect.
Right.
And that's why she did think.
Yeah.
And that was just as powerful.
It was.
Just as powerful.
And also consider this, that a lot of the guys that were in that movie were actually in the Saturday Night Live band at the time.
Yeah.
And when they started Saturday Night Live and they asked Paul Schaefer, who was the music director, "Who do you really want to be in this band?" And he said, "Oh, I know some guys." And he got the guys from Stax, from that amazing Memphis record label, Steve Cropper, Duck Dunn, Al Jackson, Matt Murphy, all of them. He got all of those really, 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 really important people, just hugely important people, to play in the Saturday Night Live band, and then they're in the movie too.
Well, the irony of it was that he wasn't able to be in the movie.
That's
because
right.
Of scheduling.
That's right.
And he said when the second one came out, which was nowhere near as good, but the music was still good, but he said that he regretted it. It was like he missed the most fun time that everybody ever had, and everybody that was part of the bands talked about that and how much they loved that. It was the best thing. And the second movie was, they did what they did and everything. They brought back more and more, but I was just amazed that in the second one, it wasn't, the quality was still there, but I was amazed at the sheer number of people they were able to get on stage.
As terrible as the second movie is, the scene of that movie, you can just put that in your DVR and fast forward to the climatic scene when the two bands have the challenge. The challenge.
Yeah.
When the first time I saw that movie, Mark, and they panned around the stage, it was every single living great blues artist ever. Charlie Musselwhite. Yeah. It was so ridiculous who was on that stage. They got to be in that movie. The whole terrible movie is worth that scene.
It is. And it's, you didn't get those people on stage for just money, because you couldn't afford them.
Right.
You couldn't afford them. There's a passion there.
Sure.
That's more than money. And like you said, the whole terrible movie is worth that climax, because, the Blues Brothers, I think they did Love Light, and they do a good job. And then B.B. King's band does a better job, I think. Mm-hmm. And then they get together and they do a great job.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was just amazing what they were able to accomplish. And I think with the Blues Brothers, I think I knew many of the artists. I got a copy of the soundtrack, And I said, this is like a greatest hits album. Where's this from? And, oh, there's a movie with this. There's a movie that this is the soundtrack, and I had to go see it.
And I have to mention, as you know, like I said, you know, I have one of my masters is in jazz history, and having Cab Calloway be in that movie, he made his debut on a talkie, you know, like a soundie rather, in like 1930. 1930. This is 1980. This is 50 years later, and he's still making a movie. You know, the Heidi Ho guy, right? That's the real Cab Calloway. That's really him, really in that movie, which is, to me, just so fascinating that he connects to the very early days of jazz. And here he is in 1980, connected to soul music and blues, and it's just delicious.
Did you ever hear Steven Spielberg talk about working with him?
No.
He says he was so difficult, and he when he sang the song, he said it wasn't as good as it could have been, and Steven Spielberg was terrified to go tell him. And he said well, it wasn't it wasn't as good as it could be. He says, well, how good can it be? He says, well, you didn't do it as good as Cab Calloway could do it. And he said, you want it as good as I can do it? He said, yeah. And he did it and knocked it out of the park.
Of course.
Because he was kind of coasting there in the beginning, you know, because he was doing this whimsical film.
Right.
But he tells us really, and you can see even as an adult, he was kind of humbled to go before him and tell him, I think you could do better.
Sure.
You know?
Can you imagine having to make that walk, man? Oh, no thanks.
But music is a very powerful thing. And,
well, like I said, man, it's the music of emotion, and anything that can touch your feels will leave a mark. And that's why it speaks to people. That's why you remember it.
How long until you retire?
Kind of depends on the math, but one kind of math is maybe 6 years, another one is maybe 8 years, so a little while longer.
I guess a musician's got a good retirement plan, because then you can go back and focus on your craft, and versus most people that you know.
And there is a lot of music around here in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia area. There really is. And a lot of famous musicians came from here, and there is definitely a scene of a lot of different things. There's a classical scene, there's a jazz scene, there's an alternative scene, there's all kinds of stuff. There's polka bands. It's a major U.S. city. But the way that music is a part of the culture in New Orleans, the way it's a part of the culture in Austin, Nashville, Rio, Budapest, Hungary, the way that, you know, in New Orleans, like, they have music at every gathering of more than 5 people. You know, if you go out to eat and you order French fries and you get an onion ring in your French fries, let's have musicians. Let's have a party. Oh my God, I got an onion ring. Like, that's about as little as it takes to make it so that there's live musicians everywhere. It's incredible. And I think when I do finally retire or soft retire, Kim and I are going to go somewhere where it's, you know, music culture. So we'll see. Well, I thank you for coming. I'm sorry she couldn't be here. Maybe I'll talk to her at some future time. I hope so. She's a fascinating person. Yeah, she did. She seemed it seemed like that as interesting as you are. Her stories might be as interesting or better. Absolutely. And but thank you for 22 years so far of tolerating our youth. Right on. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Okay, we're done, Russell.